Hi, I'm Will Bruin, and I was just recognized as a Seattle Sounders legend. Now I get to do voice reads for the Sounder at Heart podcast network.
This episode of Nos Audietis is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based wine retailer and proud sponsor of Nos Audietis since 2011. Full Pull was founded in 2009, is based in Seattle, and is owned and operated by longtime Sounders supporters. They offer the best boutique wines of the world to members of their mailing list, with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest.
Here we go. Come on! Hey, O'Shan! Let's go!
A save by Fry! The Seattle Sounders have done it! MLS Cup winners!
Here comes Ray Diaz through the middle to crown it for Seattle! And now they truly can start the celebrations. It's the Sounders MLS Cup.
Nico Ladero leaves absolutely no doubt! The Sounders rule the region!
Seattle Sounders is good.
It's gone! Darren's gone! Finally!
This feels fucking awesome.
This is a tiny dog.
We want to win. It's Seattle Sounders, bro.
Porter says cheated.
You know, what was the thought process in terms of who you decided to use and who you didn't?
Ever since Sounder Hart wrote a commentary that we didn't take Open Cup seriously.
Welcome to another episode of Nos Audietis, sponsored by Full Pull Wines and the subscribers on Sounder at Heart. We're recording on Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. I am your host, Jeremiah Shan. I am joined by my co-host, Aaron Campo, as well as our engineer, Lickett. All right, let's see if I remember how to do this. The Sounders are through to the League's Cup quarterfinals, which I guess is good. They're coming off a resounding 4-0 win over Pumas UNIM. Our good friends from Liga MX, they did it behind 2 goals from Jordan Morris, a goal from 2 assists from Albert Rusnak, and another goal from Paul Rothrock. It was a really fun game, and for their efforts, they get to play LAFC again on Saturday. By the time you listen to this, the summer transfer window will be just about closing, and the deadline to renew your season tickets will be quickly approaching. So, just another normal one here in Sounders world. Aaron, let's start by talking about the Pumas game first, though. What did you make of that? What do you make of League's Cup so far? If I remember correctly, the last time you recorded without me and Mark was the loss to Necaxa?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Leagues Cup, I think I'll just get it out of the way. I still think it's a silly competition. I'd rather it not be happening. On the record with that, we're in the competition and it's been a lot of fun generally. The Galaxy game was great. The Pumas game was obviously great. The Minnesota game was pretty entertaining. The Necaxa game, not as much, but it's been
3 out of 4 ain't bad.
Yeah, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. And I think too, in hindsight, right? We've seen the Galaxy performance, we've seen the Pumas performance. I feel comfortable saying that Necaxa was a bad matchup, who got a couple of goals at really opportune times. And were just set up in a way that it was going to be really hard to come back from that. That's a flaw that the Sounders have that I think we're all aware of, right? They can have some trouble breaking down teams that are dug in. That's a flaw most teams have. It wasn't their night. The loss did not feel as disastrous, I think, in hindsight, as it did maybe at the time. And I think if the only thing that comes out of this competition is the Sounders have a better sense of their identity, which it really seems like they do. Yeah, they are playing in a way that I think shows that they have a cohesive idea of what they want to do. They have the ability to carry out that strategy, and they have the horses to do it. And I think that that's really all you can hope for from a team, is saying like, hey, this is who we are. We know what we need to do, and we're capable of doing it. And they've done a great job of that. Jordan Morris looks fantastic. Obed Vargas has looked fantastic. Albert Rusnak is, I think, everything we have wanted to see from him as a DP. And I will give you all the credit in the world for pointing out the last time we recorded a little over a month ago, when I was kind of more down on Rusnak, that, hey, when he plays as a 10, he's been really, really good historically for the Sounders. And I think that is really showing itself to be true. So there's just a lot to like, over these last 2 games especially, and if they can carry that back into the regular season, into the Open Cup semifinal, it's worth it, right? The tournament's worth it if it can help them turn things around fully, and get some confidence back, and hit the stretch run running. Then hey, who am I to criticize the Leagues Cup?
Yeah, the challenge is that this is sort of the point of the tournament where it gets a little tricky. Like I think up till now this has gone about, maybe not perfectly, but I think the Sounders have gotten out of this tournament what they set out to get, which was to sort of settle on a lineup. They've started the same lineup the last 2 games. There is some intrigue now about Andrew Thomas versus Stephen Fry, but we'll put that aside maybe for a later discussion. But it does look like they've settled on a outfield 10 where Jordan Morris is at the 9, Paul Rothrock is on the left, Christian Roldan is on the right, Rusnak in the middle, João Paulo, Obed Vargas, Alex Roldan, and Nuhu as the fullbacks, and of course Yamar and Reagan as the center backs. Like that feels like for now, at least until Pedro de la Vega is fully fit and ready to go, that's the lineup they used the last 2 games. It feels like it's probably their best lineup, at least for now. I don't even know if what they do, like if they continue to play like this, Pedro de la Vega might just be a super sub at this point, because Paul Rothrock is playing like a starter. He's doing everything you would want a starter to do, especially recently. But we move now into a trickier part of the tournament, and by that I mean, so the Sounders are playing LAFC, which is a tough matchup. But if they beat them, chances are they're going to have to play Club America in LA. That's going to be a tough one. If they beat LAFC and lose to Club America, now we're into sort of like worst case scenario territory, because they would have to play the 3rd place game. And frankly, I don't think, if I'm the Sounders, I want no part of the 3rd place game. There is almost literally no upside to playing in the 3rd place game. You probably have to move the game against Minnesota United. So the only open date you have is out in October, the second to last week of the season. That's kind of annoying. But then you're also creating undue fixture congestion for the Open Cup semifinal, where you have to play LAFC again. It gets tricky. Of course I want to beat LAFC in this game, because I think it would be important for the Sounders' psyche to win this game, but it does feel like there's potential for a real Pyrrhic victory in this one.
Yeah, I think that the right thing to do if you find yourselves playing in a 3rd place game is to play a first round of the Open Cup kind of lineup. Obviously,
absolutely.
You can't.
Unironically, I totally agree. I don't even think I think that's 100% what the Sounders should do.
I'm dead serious. I think there's a limit to whether or not you can. You can't call guys in for it the way you can with early Open Cup games, but as close to that lineup as you can get, that's the lineup you should put out there. And I think if you do that, you can avoid some of the negative effects of fixture congestion.
Yeah,
however, I don't know if Brian Schmetzer has that in him to do, honestly. And that's not a criticism, right? That's not a criticism of Brian Schmetzer, because he's the head coach, right? And to some degree, it is his responsibility to balance priorities and stuff like that. But I just think, you're in this tournament, right? There is a Champions Cup spot on the line, which it's a harder sell, I think, to a coach that this competition isn't really worth fighting for this year with everything else we've got going on. It's just a level of pragmatism that I wouldn't blame him for not having, I guess is the point I'm making. But the Open Cup, man, it's
like we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but I will say that if I was to make the argument for your lineup, what I would tell Brian is, look, even if you lose this 3rd place game, obviously you miss out on that Champions Cup spot, but you still have a chance to make Champions Cup by winning the Open Cup. You have a good chance, like you're playing LAFC at Starfire. If you win that game, you are probably there's a good chance you're gonna host the Open Cup final. Hosting the Open Cup final, to me, is itself a huge prize that is worth sacrificing a Champions Cup spot, because next year Champions Cup is barely something I want a part of, frankly,
Right.
because the Club World Cup is going to take up so much time and energy, and the Champions Cup next year has a real possibility of being a genuine distraction and a problem for a team like the Sounders, who are already playing in the Club World Cup. We're clearly getting ahead of ourselves here, but I don't know. Let's rewind this though. Talk a little bit more about what we liked from these Pumas and Galaxy games. I was speaking of, they may have settled on a lineup. Does this feel like the lineup that you are okay with moving forward, at least for the time being?
Yeah, I think it's impossible to change it. I mean, I think that Stefan Fry is going to get his spot back when we move back into league play. I've liked Andrew Thomas a lot. I think he's done some really good things. He hasn't done anything that makes me think that he is not the keeper of the future. I think he's really shown himself to have the goods. He also hasn't done anything to make me think that he should be taking Stefan Fry's starting spot. I think that with a guy like Stefan Fry, the drop off has to be a lot more than it's been, I guess I would say. That's just not a call I think Brian Schmetzer is going to or should be making.
I was surprised that he started the Pumas game though.
Yeah, I kind of was too. But I'm of the mind, and I know Brian Schmetzer said he wanted to get Fry a game in this competition, I believe. I'm kind of the mind that if you give a cup competition to a keeper, that's his competition, right? Okay. That's my position on it. But the Leagues Cup is a kind of a different thing, I suppose. But if you had told me 6 weeks ago, are you happy with this lineup? Is this the lineup you'd be putting out there? I would have said no. And if you had told me 6 weeks ago, Pedro de la Vega is not going to be available, I still would have said no. I don't think this is a lineup, but it's impossible for me to criticize it at this point. I don't see any better option anywhere on the field. Rothrock it's impossible for me to hand wave away what he's done. I mean, he's producing. He seems to be exactly the kind of player the Sounders needed to make the style of play work that they want to be playing. Mm-hmm. He makes stuff happen. He's growing into the game. He's showing off skills that I didn't think he had in him because he's gaining in confidence. He's in the best possible way a little bit of a dick, and I think that that's something the Sounders have kind of missed at times this year. No better example of that than in the Pumas game, where he was the first guy into every fracas, and he's not a big guy. And some of the guys on that Pumas team are very big guys, and he was not afraid of them. He was getting in their faces. It was clearly rattling them. And I think that attitude, that chip on the shoulder is an important thing for a team to have. And I think that's rubbing off on his teammates to some degree. We've talked about the mental fragility that this team has at times. And I think that standing up for themselves, not being afraid to mix it up, is helping their confidence quite a bit. And I think that a big part of that is just the way Rothrock plays the game. He's helped bring that into the team. So I think he's absolutely earned his starting spot. I think if Pedro de la Vega is back and available, I don't think there's any rush to get him back into the starting lineup at this point.
Not clearly, when Rothrock's playing the way he is.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I think Pedro de la Vega is a better, more talented player than Paul Rothrock, and I don't think that that's unfair to Paul Rothrock to say. But I think you can figure out how to, with a guy who has had the kind of injury struggles he's had, you can figure out, okay, how are we going to have this team look with Pedro, still getting Rothrock integrated, all that stuff, either when Paul Rothrock stops producing or in the off season, right? You can have those conversations then. For now, I'm just not really in any hurry. I think that what he's doing is working, and it's helping the Sounders in a lot of ways that I wouldn't have predicted, frankly, before this run.
No, I mean, if you had told me that Paul Rothrock was starting games for the Sounders in August, if you had told me that at the beginning of the season, I'd say the Sounders are in deep, deep trouble. I think I've probably used that line before, but it's remarkable the degree to which he has sort of taken this opportunity and grabbed it with both hands. He's got 5 goals across all competitions, and yet that feels like it's understating his contributions. Yeah. Like he just brings this energy. He had a quote last last night about how I've been reading all this stuff about how I'm not the most technically proficient player, and I see you guys saying this stuff, and he had another nutmeg of an opponent that's like that he's done that twice now in Leagues Cup, where he just sort of like he doesn't have the best first touch, but I do think there is sort of like, he's not the fastest or the strongest player, but I do think he's technically fine.
Yeah.
And but he does so much else that he's just tenacious, and he's, willing to just throw his body out there. He doesn't make big mistakes. I think that's the other thing. He doesn't always make the perfect pass, but he usually makes the right run.
Right. He makes the right read.
He makes the right
ideas
read.
Are good.
Yeah.
He doesn't do anything at a level that's not acceptable for a starting winger in MLS. Like he does everything. Everything about his skill set is at least like at an acceptable level.
Yeah.
There's nothing he does that jumps off the page as being elite, like an elite skill, until you watch him for enough games, and until it's all this little stuff. It's like, I'm not saying he's Chris Wondolowski, but it's the your movement is incredible with Wondolowski thing, right? Where like it's just stuff you have to see repeated to say like, oh, he's doing this stuff on purpose. Like, these are intentional decisions. He is influencing the game in a specific way. And this is part of his skill set, that it's just not the kind of stuff you notice watching a guy for 30 minutes when he gets a sub appearance or whatever. But when you watch him 6-7 games, it's like, no, these are actually elite skills, and it's why he's producing. They're just not the things that jump off the page at you necessarily.
Yeah. And sort of something you alluded to that I really liked from this game, and that Paul was certainly part of, was we've seen, like, I don't want to make it sound like the Sounders have been pushovers for the last few months, because they haven't been. They've been a good team. They're like 14-4-5 over their last 23 games across all competitions. Even if you cut out the Open Cup games, they're still on a 2.0 points per game pace. They're still scoring like 1.7 goals per game. But you go back just to more recently, they're 9-2-1 in their last 12 across all competitions, and they're scoring a ton in that time. So it's not like they've been bad, but what they haven't shown, I don't think, is the kind of togetherness, for lack of a better term, that they showed against Pumas, where every time something happened to one of their teammates, there was someone else that was jumping in and ready to kind of have their back. I thought the game really turned around when Christian Roldan got fouled, and then when he was on the ground, one of the Pumas players kicked the ball sort of at his chest. Roldan pops up and is jawing at him, ends up being a double yellow card, and the Pumas player kind of comes away like smirking, like, I just baited him into a yellow card. And a lot of times I feel like, maybe up until this game, that would have been a point where the game started to unravel, where the Sounders sort of like lost their heads, or they got in their own heads or whatever else. But instead, 3 minutes later, they score the goal. And then from that point forward, it was pretty much one-way traffic. Yeah. They had the better play over the last 60 minutes or so. And I thought it was that play that really turned it around. I absolutely loved their reaction to Jordan when Jordan Morris got on that. Like, it wasn't actually just the way they reacted to Jordan Morris's the foul on Jordan Morris at the end of the game. It was that they were even looking to score on that play.
Yes.
They were already up 3-0. And what's Christian Roldan look to do? He looks to play Jordan Morris in. That's what we need from this team.
Yeah. They wanted to inflict punishment on Pumas.
Exactly.
And that is that killer instinct, man. It's what separates, I think, the version of the Sounders that was playing decently well, had kind of gotten things back on track at home, were, tough to beat, who we were like, okay, this is like the upside version of this team.
Yeah.
That was the thing that was missing from that version of the team. And, I think that if they can find that killer instinct, if they can maintain that level of intensity, I think that they're set up to make quite a bit of noise down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, there was a point in this season not so long ago where they would have got that Rothrock goal and sort of tried to just control the game for the like manage the game for the rest of the way. To their credit, they didn't do that. Now, I will say the caveat to all this is I think their last 7 goals, so all 7 goals against both Pumas and Galaxy, have come off either throw-ins, free kicks, corner kicks, or penalties. Not all directly, but sort of like vaguely of the set piece variety.
Right.
I don't know if that's really if you can be that dangerous from those plays, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
And they are creating danger, and I will like they are creating dangerous opportunities from open play. So it's not it might be more of a quirk than a real thing. But I suppose if you're inclined to be worried about these kinds of things, there's something to be said, I suppose, about that. But it's not like they're just lobbing crosses into the box and scoring headers. They're scoring in a variety of ways. I loved the way that Jordan Morris played throughout this whole game. I love the way Albert Rusnak was playing. Obed Vargas had some great moments. I love the penalty that he drew was that also actually came off a set piece.
Yeah.
There was just I don't think I had any negative notes, frankly, about the way the Sounders played in that game. It was the most encouraging game that they've played this year, I think.
Yeah, more than the Montreal game, I think, because that game kind of felt like a fluke, even at the time. Like it felt nice, but it didn't feel repeatable. And I don't think the Sounders are going to beat every opponent 4-0, obviously. But there's something about this performance and the performance about the Galaxy that does feel repeatable, and feels like something that they can keep up. And I think, they're scoring off of set pieces when they've historically not been a great set piece team.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the way they are attacking the game,
mm-hmm.
they're being very aggressive in the attacking third when they don't have the ball. They're pressing much harder. They're playing like a counter pressing team now.
Yeah.
And when you play like that, you can create chaos from those set piece situations, right? I think Morris's run a play goal, which is, I think, maybe one of the best goals he's ever scored, frankly.
It was a great goal. Incredible
goal. And just the presence of mind, the Rothrock keeping his man on side, helping keep Jordan on side because he had, his man pinned back, was also a smart play. But that's the kind of goal that you score when you play the way the Sounders have been playing, right? Because you're just you're not dropping back and saying, well, we don't want to get beat on the counter here. You're taking the game to the opposition and you're creating chaos in the attacking third, and good things happen when you do that. And it's why I love that style of play so much, right? It's exciting and unpredictable, and you can get a lot of goals that way. It's nice.
Yeah, well, let's turn ahead to LAFC on Saturday. It looks like it just came out that the game is supposed to kick off at 5:00 on Saturday.
Wow.
Which, hey, I guess different is good, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
I think. I don't know. I'm curious what the thinking is behind that. I guess probably because America probably has the late game. Who are they playing? They're playing
the Rapids.
They're playing the Rapids. Okay.
One of the funnier matchups in world history, I would say.
Yeah, that is a funny one. But yeah, so that game is at 5:00. LAFC is just destroyed the Earthquakes, beat them 4-1. I don't know. I guess maybe there was a point. I think it may have been tied 1-1 at one point, but LAFC, the runaway winners in that one. These two teams played. Was it a month ago? I don't know. How long ago did they play? 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago?
The Sounders and LAFC?
Yeah, they just played.
It was like 3 weeks ago, right?
Okay,
it was right
3 weeks ago.
Right before the
league. It was right before.
Yeah.
Do you feel any better going into this? I mean, I think I do, but I actually felt good going into that.
Yeah,
previous game. That's what's kind of a bummer.
I did feel pretty good going into that game. I feel better going into this one. And I think part of that is the house money factor, right? Like,
yeah.
the Sounders know that they struggle against LAFC. I think it's pretty apparent. And it didn't really seem to have a hangover effect against Minnesota.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, they've played exceptionally well in the face of that loss to LAFC. Now, maybe part of that was something, you know, Brian Schmetzer said to the team after getting waxed at home against LAFC in a game they were really excited about. I don't know. But I just feel like unless they have a disastrous game to LAFC, I don't know how much psychic damage there's going to be if they lose.
Yeah, like if they were to lose in a shootout or something like that.
Yeah, or if they lose like 3-2 or, you know,
3-2,
something like that, right? Like if it's a close game, competitive game, if it's not another 3-0, or I think just as bad, like a 1-0, right? Like if they can,
you got to get a goal. The Sounders got to score.
Yeah.
They've got to score and either take a lead or tie the game. Like it can't just be them playing from behind all game.
Yes. Yeah.
But you're right. I think you're right. There's a way to not advance and it not be psychically damning.
Right. Yeah. And if you beat them, I think that's huge.
Yeah.
I think demonstrating that you can beat them, especially going into the Open Cup semifinal. If you go into the Open Cup semifinal, if you lose this game in an annoying way, or if you lose this game at all, right, and you go into the Open Cup semifinal and you win, well, it happened at Starfire. It wasn't in the league, you know, like we've got,
for sure,
which is great. Like I'll still be ecstatic, but there are still questions, right? You beat them in this game.
Like, are they actually capable of playing with LAFC? Won't really be answered.
Right. But if you beat them here and then you beat them again in the Open Cup,
now the tables have turned.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the series will be what, 11-7 at that point. That's a little better. So
yeah. Hey.
Yeah. So I think, you know, I'm excited to play them. I don't need the Sounders to be a better team than LAFC. If the Sounders lose to LAFC in the playoffs, but they have a good regular season, they make a good run at it. I mean, I can live with the Sounders not being the best team, but I don't want to keep going into games with LAFC feeling like they don't have a chance. And so having them demonstrate that they do in fact have a chance going into a game with LAFC, I think would be monumental, you know? But if they win this game, they got to win the next one.
They have, yeah.
Because I really don't want that third place game.
It would be a real bummer to win this game and not win the semifinal, because that, like we said, the third place game is sort of the worst case scenario, to the point where we both think the Sounders should effectively tank it.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be really funny to win the third place game while trying to tank.
Yeah, I would accept that.
Oh, it'd be great. It would be the funniest.
I would totally accept. I would accept that outcome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I still don't know quite what to feel about Leagues Cup in general. I do like the broad. Like there's something there. I feel like there's something that I could latch. Like the game against Pumas was a reminder that Leagues Cup can be fun. Like done right. Like that was maybe not the platonic ideal, but it was closer to the platonic ideal of what organizers imagined when they envisioned Leagues Cup. Is, you know, when Pumas scored the goal that was ultimately ruled offside, the crowd was loud. And I thought that really added to the atmosphere a lot.
Yeah, it was it just felt so much like the level of intensity on the field was so much higher than I was prepared for.
Way higher.
And it really feels like the Mexican teams are taking this thing super seriously. I mean, we've had a coach
fired over it. The results are not very good.
No, well, of course not. They're not playing at home at all. Like they're staying on the road for a month and a half. Like they're not going to do well. But yeah, I mean, it's any game where you've got guys swinging at each other. There's something for me there. If you can figure out how to make the competition a little less of a joke, if you can have that level of intensity, you can get me on board. But fully on board. I mean, I'm on board at this point. I'm invested in this thing.
Well, at this point, you go this far, you may as well try to win the thing, right?
Yeah, but I'm going to go back to not caring next year unless they can.
No, you're gonna have to buy. You're gonna have to convince me it's worth paying attention to every year, probably. Yeah. And I don't know that there's I was, you know, I don't know what the solution is to make this a better tournament, other than to sort of make there's just too many dog games. I think that's the real problem, is that there's too high of a percentage of the games are just feel like massive letdowns. And frankly, every game that is, or not every game, but most of the games that are between like Liga MX teams or between MLS teams just feel so blah. Like it's like there are ways I think to tweak this thing a little bit, but that's gonna be a consistent problem. I think until there are games in Mexico, it's not gonna feel like a real tournament.
Right.
So I don't know. But we don't need to solve that today. Right now, we just got to focus on the next one, which is the Sounders facing LAFC on Saturday, and then we go from there. We see how it goes. But we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about the transfer window that's about to close, and we both expect to be kind of disappointing. Not kind of. We expect it to be disappointing. And we're also going to talk a little bit about this whole situation with Sounders season tickets, which does not seem like it's going well, best I can tell. But we'll talk a little bit about that. And you're listening to Nos Audietis, and we will be right back. Thank you for listening to the Sounder at Heart Podcast Network, which now includes Nos Audietis, Lobbing Scorchers, and the Cooler Guild. We've been independent since August of 2023, but need your support to make sure it continues. Although this podcast is free, it's only made possible by your continued support. Memberships start as low as $25 a year, which not only helps make podcasts like this one happen, but also gets you access to everything we produce. If you're able to support us at higher levels, starting at $75 a year, you gain access to a host of other perks, most notably entry into our members-only Discord, where the smartest, funniest, and most engaged commenters share their thoughts and ideas. To find out more, just visit sounderatheart.com and click the subscribe button in the top right corner. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to Nos Audietis. So a couple subjects that I wanted to get into. Two things, as has been our habit lately, is segment one, we talk about the on the field stuff. Segment two, we oftentimes talk about stuff that is going off the field, and oftentimes not a lot of positivity in these second segments. And today is no different. We are going to be talking a little bit about the transfer window as well as season ticket renewals that the window is getting ready to close on. Why don't we start there? I wrote a story that came out this week that dug into sort of what I have been seeing, what I've been hearing from a lot of season ticket holders. I did a fair amount of research with, I talked to the Sounders a fair amount to get their perspective on things. I don't have a great idea of how season ticket renewals are actually going, but I am hearing way more people telling me that they are either canceling their season tickets, that they are reducing the number of season tickets that they have, or they are seriously considering not renewing, or this is like a last year kind of thing for them. Way more than I've ever heard before. Every year there are people that say these things, but it's never like the majority, the overwhelming majority of people that I'm hearing from. I would imagine the Sounders, like I know that I am hearing a inordinate number of complaints compared to like how many season ticket holders there are, but this looks bad. And I think a lot of it is frankly the Sounders' own making. And it really comes down to a few areas. The first one is they decided to do a pretty big increase this year. I think the average increase is somewhere around 15 to 20%. That by itself, that's pretty bad. You're going to have a fair number of people that are going to not renew based on that alone. But I think if you pull back, I still think value-wise, when you compare it to around MLS, when you compare it to other professional sports in Seattle or frankly anywhere, it's not outrageously expensive. It might even actually be relatively cheap compared to those things. But where I think the Sounders really messed up is they tried to sell this price increase as like not really a price increase. And they tried to say that it's mainly the taxes that we are adding in this year that are at fault, without sort of owning that the taxes were always being paid. They are just now putting the entire onus on those taxes going to the season ticket holder, which I suppose is fine from a business perspective, but don't tell me you're not raising prices when you're raising prices.
Yes, I think that there was actually a way where, as much as a 15% season ticket price increase can never be a PR win, I think there was a way for it to kind of get into that ballpark if the PR message from the very beginning had been, hey, so this is a big increase. We know it's a big increase. We know we've had some other big increases recently. We want to explain that in the past, we've more or less been covering all of these taxes. And these taxes went up in 2021 because of the expiration of I know it was some kind of tax break on the events tax at Lumen that was based on the original blah, 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 blah. We've been covering that since 2021 because we know the pandemic was disruptive and blah, 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 blah. But that's just not something we can do forever. Unfortunately, we have to start, adding those fees back into your season ticket costs.
Right.
That is honest about what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting out ahead of things. It's being transparent. And yeah, like, people are going to be upset by it. You're going to lose some people over it. But I think most people who are being reasonable are going to look at that and say, hey, you know what? At least they are trying to communicate what's going on. Right. They're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes.
Right.
That was kind of cool of them to cover that fee increase for as long as they did. So that's
especially coming out of COVID.
Yeah.
And whatever you could, there was a way to pitch this.
Right. Where
it felt good.
Yeah. Yeah. And instead they did, I think, the worst possible thing that they could have done, which is to gaslight people and say, well, no, your tickets aren't going up.
Right.
Well, it's like, well, clearly they are. Like,
right. The taxes went up, not your tickets.
And like, yes, the taxes did go up 3 years ago.
Right.
And like, I'm with you. I think that compared to what people are paying for entertainment, and whether or not that's a reasonable thing that entertainment costs have gotten as expensive as they are, if there's any moral justification, that's a whole separate subject, and you can probably guess where I fall on that one. But ultimately, the Sounders are a business, and I think these increases are in line more or less with inflation in that sector of the economy, right? And they're going to operate like a business in that regard. And yeah, Sounders season tickets are still a pretty good deal in that context. But you're I don't want to say that they were lying to people, because I don't think that that's accurate, but they were definitely trying to spin this in a way where people weren't going to fall for it. I think people.
That's the thing that is so weird. Like, did they really think people were going to look at their bills, see that they were paying more than they were paying last year, and just accept that it's taxes?
Like, I didn't talk to any reps, but my understanding is that people were being told this is a new tax.
Right. That's what I heard too. At least at one point during this process, that was sort of the line. This is a new tax.
And taxes are publicly available information. Like, the government is not charging secret taxes, really. And so that was easy to debunk. And it's insulting, I think, to your fan base. And when we're in this period of the economy is not great right now, I think, for most people, and inflation has come under control, but it still has hit people really hard over the last few years. There's a lot of competition for entertainment dollars. The Sounders fan base is aging and probably has competing priorities for their money right now that they didn't have 10 years ago. And
because the Sounders haven't done a great job of bringing in the new generation of fans, I think that's part of the problem.
And they've done a really piss poor job of keeping the value proposition up for their existing fans. I mean, we've talked about this before, but man, when I was paying like $300 for my season ticket, and every game felt like a party, and the team was winning, and they were investing money.
Easiest money you spent ever, probably.
Absolutely. And I did not have a lot of money back then,
Right.
but it was a no-brainer for me. And now, like, the games are still fun, but they're not, it doesn't feel like a part. I mean, we've talked about this.
Yeah.
It's the game day experience sucks compared to what it used to be. The level of investment in the on-field product is not anything compared to what it used to be.
Right.
Relative to the rest of the league, obviously they're paying, the salaries are higher and all that good stuff, but MLS is paying those. So I don't know really how much that matters. Yeah, it's just it's not a good value proposition compared to what it used to be. And at the very least, be honest about what you're doing in a situation like this. And I just, it's shocking to have handled it as poorly as they could. And it feels like there's this trend of things where it's like, there's something that they're going to have to take a hit for some degree. And their attempts to mitigate it are the absolute worst thing they could have done.
And then they have to apologize.
Right.
And they say, well, we'll do better next time.
Right.
And then we start the cycle again.
Yeah. It's just baffling from an organization that used to seemingly have all of this stuff figured out to a degree that other clubs didn't. It's just bad. And I don't know what changed. I don't know when it changed really, but it's really disappointing to see.
It is disappointing. And I think the other thing that I'm hearing from a lot of fans, and this sort of dovetails nicely into the end of the transfer window, is that for all these rising costs, fans are having a really hard time looking at the product and saying, so where's all the new money going? You sold yourselves out for Providence. They apparently are doing a great business in terms of like bringing in revenue outside of tickets. Ticket prices are going up. So where's the money going? Because the answer can't be, well, it went into building long anchors or it went to investing in the rain. It has to be going like that. Those are nice things to do. Those are admirable things. Maybe they're even necessary for the business. But at some point, the money has to go back onto the field. And, here we are sitting about 24 hours from the close of the transfer window. Everything I'm hearing is if the Sounders make a move, it'll be a surprise. I'm not expecting them to make a move. I would love to find out that they made one. But at the very least, they're leaving it to the last minute. I know there's a lot of frustration within the front office about their inability to get something done because they wanted to get something done. And they are, to some degree, I think it's understandable. They're trying to thread a needle that is tough to thread, in that they don't want to bring in someone just for the sake of bringing in someone, although I would argue that it would be worthwhile to bring in someone just for the sake of bringing in someone. But whatever. They don't want to bring in someone that is not an improvement over their current options, but fits in their salary cap. So they have roughly 680,000, call it 650,000, something like that, to spend on a player, and that's what they can get with all in. That's not a huge amount of money, but it's enough to bring in someone. But they have to be better than the current options, which are guys like Paul Rothrock, Christian Roldan, Pedro de la Vega. We know who they have to be beating for minutes. I understand there's a challenge there, but they could also do something out. If they were willing to spend a transfer fee, they could go out and sign 2 U22s if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And they would definitely fit under the salary cap. They would have to spend real money on transfer fees, but that would be clearly a sign that they were trying to do something. And instead, they're not going to do anything, I don't think. It's such a bummer. And I think it absolutely feeds into the frustration that fans are getting, even as the team is playing better. That's the killer part to me.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, I don't want to say it makes it worse, but when the Sounders looked like they were going to kind of limp into the playoffs and not make a whole lot of noise, and maybe this would be kind of a wasted year, I still wanted them to do something, but the position of, why bother?
What are you going to do?
Was like a little more understandable.
Yeah, sure.
I feel like a difference maker on this team right now that can give them, another option off the bench even, or like whatever it is, added depth, cover for Joao Paulo, who has been great, but maybe not the healthiest guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of those things would make me feel better about this team's ability to go on a run in the playoffs. And it's just unconscionable to me that they're not going to do that. And it's like, you look back at I think what is probably would be considered the halcyon days of this team from 2014 to 2021. They were active in every summer window.
Yep.
They there was a run where they brought in Nico one year, Victor Rodriguez the next, Raul. They also brought in I think like Alvaro Fernandez, like complementary players, Kelvin Leardam. They were always making Brad Smith. They were making moves, doing things to improve the team. And, if they were doing similar things in the off season, right? Like if they were front loading all their moves, that would be one thing. And like, I don't want to shortchange the Pedro de la Vega signing, but it's like you're ostensibly replacing Nico Ladero with Pedro de la Vega, who, yeah, you paid a big transfer fee for him, but he's not making anywhere near what Nico Ladero was making.
In terms of, if you compare $2016 to $2024,
yeah,
the investment in Pedro de la Vega is like a 60% at best investment.
Yes. Yeah. And then aside from that, you're bringing in Danny Musovski, who I think for what his salary is and his ostensible role on the team, I think is a perfectly good signing. And that's all you're doing. That's it. That's just not, you can't continue like this. This is going to be the third straight summer transfer window where the Sounders aren't making a move, which I think is unprecedented in modern MLS.
Yeah. If it's almost certainly unprecedented in the TAM era.
Yeah.
It might be like, and I don't know, I guess there was a point at which MLS teams weren't super active in the summer. So I'm sure at some point you can find teams that went 3 straight summers. But in terms of the MLS that the Sounders have existed in, this is so outside the norm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unbelievable to me that this is being allowed to happen, that there's just no impetus at whatever level in the front office. There needs to be the impetus to make these things happen. There just doesn't seem to be any willingness to do it. And it's so frustrating, because it just does feel like finally this group of players has kind of figured out how they want to approach games. They're starting to trust each other. They're starting to transform into something different and better and more exciting. And it really feels like if they could capitalize on this positive energy and this progress by making a signing that is going to be impactful down the stretch,
or at least has the potential to be impactful down.
Yeah, that just shows that they're committed to doing something to improve this team. I think it could be huge, and they're not going to do it. And I do not understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me at all on any level that has the sporting success of the team being a priority, right? I'm sure you could make the case for this decision and the decision in the last couple of summer windows on a dollars and cents level,
but not for 3 straight summers.
No.
That's the part where it becomes sort of like unconscionable almost.
Yeah.
And I understand there's a lot of frustration with Craig Weibel, and I don't want to absolve him of responsibility, because I think he ultimately is the one who that's charged with making the roster. But I do think the reality is that there's no, like, they're not being given budget to make bigger moves. I think that is hard to not recognize. Like, if they had millions of dollars to go pay transfer fees, you got to figure they would go do it. If they had millions of dollars to replace Raul Ruidiaz, who, like, you might be able to make, like, we've talked about this so much, but I think you can make a sporting argument for keeping him on the roster, I guess, but you can't, let that be the reason you don't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. There's got to be a way to make something happen that doesn't involve trading away so much value that you hamstring your team in other areas or whatever it is. Like, there just has to be a way for that to happen.
Yeah, it's just very, I want to be excited about this team, and I am excited about them on game day. They're fun. Like, the Pumas game was a lot of fun. I don't want to take away from that at all. The LAFC game has the potential to be a lot of fun. I don't want to take away from that at all. But I am getting to the point where I'm genuinely worried about the direction of the way that spending is, the way this team is being budgeted. And I would have told you a few months ago that of course this winter they'll go out, or whether or not it was this summer or this coming winter, they would take the Raul Ruidiaz DP spot and make a big signing, and maybe they'd even make two.
Right.
I don't know. I can't guarantee that at this point. I assume that they'll do something, but I don't know what they're going to do. I really don't. I wish. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine they'll sign a DP, but is it going to be, you sure as hell would hope, I'll tell you that much. But is it going to be the 2024 version of Raul Ruidiaz? I don't have any faith that that's going to be the case.
No, I don't either.
And like you said, like 3 months ago, I would have been appalled if somebody suggested that the Sounders weren't going to have that level of ambition.
I'm sure I've argued with people that I thought were being so unnecessarily pessimistic about their willingness to spend. And
I think based on the evidence we had at the time, that was the right position to take.
I do too.
Things have very clearly changed. And I don't know. It's not tenable, man. It's just not, because this roster that they have right now that's playing pretty well, these guys aren't going to be good forever. You've got to replace them at some point. And and we can't go through another stretch like we did at the beginning of the season or the middle of last season. Like, we can't do this every year. It's frustrating, man.
Yeah. The other thing, it is kind of, I don't know. It's both remarkable and frustrating when you look at this roster and how everyone was acquired. They have almost everyone in this roster was either acquired on the very, very cheap but in terms of money that they actually paid transfer fees for. They have Yamar, who they bought in 2020. They have Nuhu, I suppose you can argue, because they did pay a transfer fee for him, but it was like a very minimal transfer fee. They have João Paulo, who they bought in 2020 as well. They have Leo Chu, who they bought in 2021. And Pedro de la Vega, who they obviously just bought. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Everyone else they have acquired either through the academy system, through the draft, or as a free agent. And there might be a few guys in there. There's a few guys in there who they may have paid like some marginal trade. They may have traded for or something like that. But like Stephen Fry, I suppose they made a trade for Stephen Fry. But like almost all these players on their roster are players they gave up. Like what I say, they count 4 or 5 players that they paid a transfer fee for. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and most, like, we're not talking big transfer fees.
No,
right? Like Raul's
most of them were a long time ago.
Yeah, Raul's was a big transfer fee.
Oh,
De La
Raul, I guess I missed Raul.
De La Vega's was sizable for transfer fees paid by the club in history. That's a pretty middle of the road transfer fee in MLS.
Every team in MLS at this point is paying equivalent transfer fees.
And I always want to stress, I don't believe that transfer spend has any correlation to winning. Right,
but you have to spend something.
Yes, you have to be willing to buy players.
You don't have to spend the most, but you have to spend something.
Yeah, and if you're not going to pay transfer fees, sign free agents. Like, you can't talk about how that's where the real value is
when they haven't signed a foreign free. Right, they haven't signed. No, they have none of the players on their roster right now are foreign free. Like, none of them were signed on frees from foreign teams.
And think about all the players that have been key players for good Sounders teams that they acquired that way. Gustav Svensson, Victor Rodriguez,
There's a lot of them. Yeah, absolutely.
Nelson Valdez, kind of, Eric Freeberg, right? Like lots of
Andres Ivanchits.
Yeah, good players that, you know, that would help a lot right now. If we could have the 2024 version of Andreas Ivanchits on this team right now, I would be so happy. It would help so much to have another guy like that on this team.
Yeah.
Gustav Svensson even, right? Like, and you know, there's just no, they're just not willing to do it. And it's baffling. It's truly baffling.
You know, Adrian gave an interview to me earlier this year that I would imagine most of you listened to. And I asked him about the whole thing where, like, well, what do you do? Like, tell us about your background. And he's like, and I just sort of like throw away question, like, well, how involved are you? And I now think it's like, maybe he was telling us more than I realized at the time, that he was, you know, like, I do think he is more involved in the transfer strategy than I realized. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. It feels like he's maybe micromanaging this more than, I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel great about the way that the front office is set up right now. I hope that they can get it together and that they can make some signings. And I would like to think that worst case, they figure this out by winter and we go into the preseason feeling good about the state of the roster and their willingness to spend. But where we sit right now, I don't feel great.
Yeah. If they go out and they, you know, spend 10 plus million on a you know, not necessarily a Raul Ruiz replacement, but an attacking DP, and you know, they make a couple other, like, even if they bring Rusnak back as a DP, I'm fine with that at this point, honestly. But they make
honestly,
some other...
I don't expect them to spend enough to reliably upgrade over Rusnak.
No. And there's something to be said for some continuity, but they've got to turn over some of the other guys. Like, I like this roster, but you can't convince me that there's not improvement to be had in the starting 11, right?
Right.
They cannot go into another season being as reliant on Joao Paulo as they are right now.
No. Like, like, I would like to think there's a place for him on the roster, but he can't be a automatic starter next year.
Just one time I would like them to move on from somebody too soon.
Yeah.
You know, like, if that means trading a guy who's a nailed on starter right now for some value, either down the line or flexibility or whatever, whatever it is. But I just, I feel great about the present for this team, and I've never felt worse about the future for this team. And it's not.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah. Well, that's on that wonderful note. I suppose we should wrap up. I will say we are doing a anniversary party next week on August 22nd at Fast Fashion. If you are a supporter or above of Sounder at Heart, you can get some free tickets. I would encourage you to look through your email to find information about that. If you want to go to this, we have also sent out emails about it. I would encourage you to go through your email and find out how to get tickets. And if you're just listening to this and you want to show up, I mean, I don't know, do some enterprising and figure it out. But we are going to celebrate. We're going to have a live show. We're going to hopefully just have a good time.
We'll have a PA this time.
We'll do what?
We'll have a PA this time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I went and bought a PA. So we won't repeat the foibles of our last live show. And I think mainly we just want to have a good time. I've been trying to curb my desire to, what I always do is blow this up, and that's how YachtCon was born. Was basically like over planning a live episode,
right?
And I tried to make this not YachtCon. I don't want anyone to come into this with the expectation that it's going to be like YachtCon. It's just going to hopefully be like a low-key fun event where hopefully I get to actually talk to people. Like, my hope is that there's like not so many people there that I could actually talk to people. Like that would be cool.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Like the last live show we did, I got to talk to a lot. Anyone who wanted to talk to me was able to talk to me. That was cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I like meeting you all.
Yeah. Nobody wanted to talk to me, but that's okay.
Did no one talk to you?
No, I don't think that's true.
Oh, I was gonna say I don't think that's true, but I am really excited that we made it a year. So far, renewals seem to be going okay. We haven't quite hit the point where like the biggest portion of our annual subscribers are due. I think that's like in a week, where a lot, like all of a sudden, a lot of subscriptions are going to run out in a week, and so we're really going to find out how many people want to make this a sustainable thing. But so far, so good. We haven't been inundated with early subscribers who are canceling, so that's good. We're tracking well.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's been a fun ride. This has been kind of amazing. I don't know that I've fully like appreciated. Like this is an amazing thing that we accomplished.
I agree.
Like, and I want to say thank you to our listeners. Like I've been able to do this. Like I made it a year basically. This was essentially my full-time job all year. And we've been able to pay a lot of all our contractors. I haven't missed any paychecks.
Yeah. None of it went into Jim Bankoff's pocket, so that's good.
None of it went into Jim Bankoff's pocket. A lot of it went into the government's pocket, though. Man.
Yeah. Well,
I had to pay some taxes.
That's
but as a big lefty, I suppose I should like own that, right? I should be proud.
Price of civilization, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I should love paying my taxes. I should.
Yeah.
It's the best day of the year. But anyway, thank you to everyone for taking this ride with us. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Lickett. I hope you guys are still enjoying this.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you to Full Pool Wines. God, it's crazy. Full Pool Wines has been sponsoring us since 2011 or something, 2012,
something like that. Yeah.
And I asked them if they wanted to sport lobbing scorchers. They're like, yeah, I would like to do that. So that's cool. The doctor's office is sponsoring the Cooler Guild, which is the new Rain podcast on the Sounder at Heart podcast network. So it's been a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Yeah.
I took two vacations this year.
Yeah. When you never able to do that.
No, I didn't really, I don't know if I really 100% logged off, but I didn't record this podcast.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah. It's always a plus to, get to take a break. And I always like hanging out with Mark, so.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't get anything out of it, but.
Oh yeah, he gets paid.
Oh, that's right.
A little bit. He gets paid a little bit. Aaron's like, what? Where's my paycheck? All right. Well, anyway, I guess that's our sign off.
Yeah. We had to say something nice after.
Yeah, exactly. I had to. Yeah, exactly. You gotta. They call it a shit sandwich, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Is that what they call it? Which you're not supposed to do, apparently. I was in a management with one of the things I did, not to go on too far of a tangent. One of the last things I did when I was at SB Nation or at Vox, whatever you want to call it, I had to go through like a management. I was sort of in management there, and I had to go through some classes. And one of the things they told us about giving feedback was that you shouldn't do a shit sandwich, where you say two nice things around one negative thing. People don't like that, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like people do like to hear good things too.
They do. They definitely do. And I would rather, if I'm in a meeting with my boss or listening to a soccer podcast, which are pretty analogous situations.
Same thing, yeah.
I want to hear all the things I need to hear, whether they're good or bad. But it's nice to start on a pleasant note, and it's nice to end on an up note as well. So
that feels like a human desire.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't want you to be like, oh, you did a really good job, in that meeting the other day. We're laying you off. Also, I like your shoes. Like, obviously, that's not great.
Right.
But otherwise, I think it's fine.
Yeah,
I think feeding a shit sandwich to your subordinates is fine. You can clip that, put it on record if you'd like.
But yeah, that's the next promo.
Yeah,
the next No Audiences promo. Aaron supports shit sandwiches.
That's right.
All right. Well, that really is a good place to end it.
Yeah.
I'm Jeremiah O'Shan signing off for my co-host Aaron Campo and Lickett. This is Nos Audietis, and remember, you'll never get alone.
We love you. Let's win another one!